Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. As I understand, the negotiation process that were taking place behind the scenes between Russia and Western countries and Ukraine failed, and most likely the Russians used this period of time for regrouping, and most likely the Russians are about to launch another wave of escalation in this conflict. Today we got very interesting statements that were made by the representative in the UN from Russian Federation. He reported that there are going to be no Minsk agreements and no freezing of the conflict, no Ukraine in NATO, just demilitarization and denazification of Ukraine. All goals of the special military operation will be achieved. That was stated by the representative of Russian Federation in the Organization of United Nations. Later we start receiving additional updates from Zelensky. He gave us a lot of very interesting updates. For example, Zelensky reported that Russian intelligence confirmed the colleagues from other countries, including the West, that DPRK soldiers will be involved in the war with Ukraine. The key word in this statement is that Russian intelligence confirmed. It's not like something like Ukrainian intelligence managed to collect information about the presence of DPRK in the territory of the Sudzha direction. This is not something like CIA managed to discover the situation. This statement tell us that it was the Russians who provided information to the Western countries that the Russians are planning to use the DPRK forces on the territory of Ukraine or in the conflict with Ukrainian army, because it's completely different things. Furthermore, Zelensky in the end added that Trump will not be able to stop the war by forcing Ukraine to give up its territories. If Trump, in case of victory, wants to end the war by forcing Ukraine to give up its territories, then he will not succeed, Zelensky told to the South Korean channel and to the South Korean media. And let's take a look at the reaction of the Western countries, including the United States of America, about these North Korean soldiers, and the representatives of the United States of America, including the Antony Blinken and the Minister of Defense, the head Lloyd Austin, stated that Russia will use North Korean forces on the battlefield against Ukraine in the coming days. And that was stated by the U.S. Secretary of State. Washington has not seen the use of these forces against the Ukraine armed forces, but expects this to happen in the coming days, Antony Blinken said at the joint briefing with the Pentagon Chief Lloyd Austin, and the heads of the South Korean foreign and defense ministers. Russia has deployed about 8,000 North Korean troops to the Kursk region and is training them. So I'll remind you that we got several numbers. Somebody was saying that about 12,000 soldiers. Now we have the number of 8,000 soldiers. Anyway, this is going to happen, and this is going to be the battle for the Kursk region. And as for the Kursk region, during the previous 24 hours, we had additional changes, additional videos that confirm something interesting. For example, in this video, we can see how the Russians were fabbing the Ukrainian positions in the north and Sudzha direction. We have several fab strikes on the heads of Ukrainian soldiers, and this is very important video because just yesterday, if you remember, we got changes on the ground and in the same place, in the same forest. Just yesterday, the Russians were attacking the Ukrainian forces with the use of the significant number of personal carriers, armored vehicles, and personnel, and the Russians were trying to take under control this part of the forest. And today, on this 1st of November, we got the video of how the Russians were bombing these territories. So both these videos of Russian attack and Russian fab strikes in this territory confirms and means that most likely the Russians are planning to move further along this forest, and if the Russians are able to take under control this position, this small part of the forest, then the Russians will be able to create a small cauldron for the Ukrainians who are currently located in this territory. So between the villages of Orlovka, Pogribki, Marievka, and this dense network of tree forests. So if the Russians, and this is exactly what the Russians are doing right now. So after a very long operational pause, the Russians now begin cutting this piece of pie into many pieces. Now let's move further and let's talk about the northern Kupyansk direction, because during the previous night we got a lot of updates with the significant progress of the Russians between the cities of Kupyansk, villages of Petropavlovka and Senkovka. At least that was stated by different reliable neutral mappers. Let's take a look at the changes. So this is the situation on the ground by the end of the 31st of October, and this is the situation at the beginning of the 1st of November. The Russians managed to secure this forest completely along the river Voskol, and the Russians managed to improve their positions in the village of Petropavlovka. Obviously, the significant progress, and we have video that confirms Russian control over positions on the Ukrainian side of the river by the name of Gnilitsa. In this video, we can see the Ukrainian armored vehicle that was counterattacking the Russian forces on the Ukrainian side of the river of Gnilitsa. This is very important because now the Russians have no water barrier in front of them. They are begun operating already on the Ukrainian side, and the Russians are moving further. I'll remind you that we haven't been receiving anything from the Sinkovka area for several weeks. The main updates were coming from Kruglakovka, from the Kolesnikovka, from this territory. Furthermore, and during the previous night, there were lots of updates from pro-Ukrainian sources that Ukrainians managed to redeploy up to 30 tanks in this direction with the purpose to counterattack the Russians and to cut these Russian positions inside of Kruglakovka. The Russians are saying that those posts were just speculations, nothing like this is happening right now. But anyway, I believe we need to pay attention to this situation, because if this information is correct, the Ukrainians will try to counterattack and to force the Russians to fall back from the river of Voskol. Now let's move further and let's talk about the Pokrovsk direction, because as for the Toretsk and Chasiv and the Siversk, we haven't received anything special, but as for the Pokrovsk direction, we have additional reports. Let's talk about the local direction of Kurakhova. During the previous 24 hours, during the previous night, as you can see, we got a lot of icons with the flags. Most of them are coming to the north of the Kurakhova water reservoir, which means that during the previous 12 hours, we got additional updates with the significant changes on the ground. First, let's compare the map and then we will discuss in details. So this is the situation on the ground by the end of the 31st of October. The Russians were located on the outskirts of Kremenная Balka. The Russians managed to dig in deeper in the eastern outskirts of Novoselidovo, and the Russians managed to secure the eastern flank of the village of Kurachovka. And now let's discuss the situation at the beginning of the 1st of November. As you can see, the Russians managed to take under control the village of Kremenная Balka completely. Furthermore, this information was confirmed both by pro-Russian resources and by pro-Ukrainian resources. Once again, this is the situation on the ground at the end of the 31st of October, and this is by the beginning of the 1st of November. Once again, the village of Kremenная Balka was captured by the Russians, and most likely this information will be confirmed today by maybe even by the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation. So this is Novoselidovka. This is the situation by the end of the 31st of October. This is at the beginning. The Russians managed to take under control around 60-70% of the settlement and to take under control the strongholds and the fortifications around. The Ukrainians are saying that there is a breakthrough, and the Ukrainians increasing, speeding up their evacuation and the process of escaping the cauldron. As for the village of Vovchenka, we got report that the Russians managed to secure the village completely. Probably today, the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation will report about one of these villages, either about Kremenная Balka or Kurachovka or the village of Vovchenka. So the Russians are moving, the Ukrainians are retreating, and the Ukrainians yet haven't managed to stabilize the situation. As for the area of responsibilities of Group of Forces South, we haven't received anything during the previous 24 hours. We don't know for sure what is happening right now on the eastern outskirts of Kurakhova. And let's talk about the group of area responsibilities of Group of Forces East. Today we got additional reports from the village of Shakhtarskaya. The Russians published a video of how they were raising the flag in the most central part of this village. In this video we can see a Russian soldier that was waving the flag from the building, probably some government office or something like this. And based on this video, lots of mappers have adjusted their maps in Russian favor, but we added just the central part to the Russian control. We still haven't received anything from the most western part of the settlement. So this is the situation on the ground by the end of the 31st of October, and this is the situation at the beginning of the 1st of November. So most likely there are still heavy clashes in the most western part, or the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation will provide us additional updates. On the other side, we continue receiving reports of how the Russians are attacking and FPV droning the Ukrainian forces in the fields between the villages of Maximovka, Trudove, Bagayavlenka, and the stronghold on this line. Ukrainians are suffering losses. Currently, the Ukrainians are trying to regroup and to escape possible encirclements and multiple cauldrons by moving their forces from the south in the northern direction. The Russians are controlling this territory with FPV drones, and during the previous night, we got a significant number of videos of damaged and destroyed vehicles and personal carriers of the armed forces of Ukraine. So we are at the next stage of escalation. So let's wait for the next few days. Most likely we're going to see lots of new things in the way of the special military operation. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.